There is a kind of pain so quiet, most never even hear it. It hums beneath the noise of daily life. It whispers while you scroll, while you nod, while you smile. It speaks in the language of the lost, and it says, you do not know where you are going. And worse, you do not even realize it. Centuries ago, Confucius warned, when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, do not adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. But today, people do not adjust the steps. They abandon the journey. They look away from purpose and choose convenience. They trade destiny for distraction, and so we drift. Modern lives, ancient confusion, surrounded by more options than ever before, yet guided by less wisdom. We mistake movement for meaning. We mistake popularity for purpose. We mistake comfort for clarity. The lost are not always those who sit still. Sometimes, the most lost are the busiest, running fast in circles, climbing ladders leaning against the wrong walls, sprinting toward goals that were never their own to begin with. Confucius believed that a man without direction is a man already defeated, not because he is weak, but because he is blind. And blindness in the soul is the most dangerous of all. So, what is it that causes this fog? What is this disorienting weight pressing down on so many? It is the death of self-examination. Most people never pause, never ask the hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What am I building that will last longer than my mood? Am I living in alignment or in autopilot? And that's why they stay lost. Because the compass that points to purpose is not external, it is internal, and few dare to look inward anymore. They want directions but skip the part where they define the destination. They want clarity but avoid the mirror. Clarity does not come from convenience, it comes from confrontation. You must confront your choices, your patterns, your values, your lies. The truth, most people would rather feel busy than feel burdened by truth. They hide behind calendars and careers. But Confucius said, to know what you know and to know what you do not know, that is true knowledge. That is the beginning. To say, I do not know who I am, but I am willing to find out. That honesty, that humility, it lights the torch in the dark. Because the lost are not cursed, they are simply unled. Unled by conviction, unanchored by truth. Purpose is not gifted, it is earned. Through introspection, through stillness, through listening, not to the world, but to the soul. You must understand something timeless. The mind is your first battlefield. Before you conquer anything external, you must take dominion within. Every belief you hold is a map, and most people are living on maps drawn by someone else. Their parents, their schools, their peers, their fears. They walk paths they didn't choose. They inherit goals they don't question. But belief without reflection is a cage. And Confucius taught this directly. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. But how can you move a mountain if it was never yours to move? The first step is disbelief in everything that doesn't serve your future. Doubt the lies, challenge the noise, reject what is borrowed. Then, from that silence, begin again. This is why most people stay lost. They never clean the lens through which they see. Their inner vision is blurry, fogged with fear, smudged with shame. They look out at the world, but their window is clouded. And so every goal, every relationship, every attempt, distorted. Clarity is not a luxury, it is a requirement. Without it, your effort is a leaking bucket, full of motion, empty of meaning. You must sit with your life, Audit it. Where is your time going? Who is influencing your thoughts? What do you do daily that aligns with your deepest truth? If the answer is nothing, then the question is, why are you surprised you feel lost? Most people don't need more motivation. They need introspection, because you cannot drive fast until you know where the road leads. Otherwise, speed is self-sabotage. Confucius believed the wise are not those who know everything, but those who are willing to examine everything, starting with themselves. He said, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. That's your gift today. Ignorance is not failure. It is feedback. A flashlight pointing to the corners you've yet to explore. Do not fear being lost. Fear refusing the map within, because the difference between a lost man and a found one is not perfection. It is direction. And direction begins the moment you sit in silence and say, I want to see again. Clarity births direction, but direction without vision is still not enough. A map means nothing to the man who has no destination, and this is where most people fail. They confuse goals with vision. Goals are tasks, checkboxes. Vision is a fire. It is the image of the person you must become. It is the story your future self tells you in dreams, in whispers, in moments of stillness. Confucius said, the expectations of life depend upon diligence. The mechanic that would perfect his work must first sharpen his tools. Your vision is the sharpening. Without it, you hack at life with a dull blade, trying, striving, surviving, but never carving meaning. Look around. Most people's dreams aren't even theirs. They were assigned by culture, by economics, by fear. They want what others want because they never dared to imagine more. But vision doesn't come from the world. It comes from within. You must close your eyes to see it. You must shut out the noise to hear it. You must sit with your own imagination and ask, what do I see when no one else is watching? Most will never ask that question because it demands that you stop being who you were told to be. It demands evolution, and that is terrifying to a stagnant heart. But let me ask you, if your life today was exactly the same 10 years from now, would you celebrate or mourn? If the answer is anything less than joy, then your vision is calling you forward. It is asking you to come home, because purpose is not something you find. It is something you return to. You were born with it, but life made you forget, and now the work is to remember. That's why clarity matters. That's why vision matters, because you cannot afford to live another year in confusion, running towards someone else's finish line, holding a trophy that means nothing to your soul. And once you begin to see, really see, you must make a choice. A sacred, terrifying choice of discipline. Because every vision dies without discipline. Every purpose fades in the absence of persistence. You don't rise by emotion, you rise by decision. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you must become. It is the act of devotion, not to comfort, but to calling. Confucius knew this. The will to win, the desire to succeed, the urge to reach your full potential, these are the keys that will unlock the door to personal excellence. Not desire alone, not motivation, but will. Will to rise when it's hard, will to choose integrity when no one applauds, will to repeat, refine, rebuild, day after day. Discipline is not punishment, it is love. Love for the person you're becoming. Love for the future that depends on you. Love for your untold story that deserves to be written. So many stay lost because they think desire is enough, but a fire without focus will burn everything. You must contain it, shape it, aim it. This is where greatness is forged, in quiet, daily acts of devotion. Waking early, choosing the harder path, delaying pleasure, facing weakness, and doing it all without applause, because direction doesn't scream, it whispers. And discipline is how you stay close enough to hear it. And as discipline takes root, so too must resilience, because the moment you commit to clarity, to vision, to purpose, life will test you. It must. Growth does not come in ease. It comes in fire. There will be doubt. There will be detours. There will be nights you question everything. But this is the moment Confucius prepared us for. He said, "Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall, and rise you must." Because staying down is not an option when your life is a message to others. You were not born to be a warning. You were born to be a wake-up call. Resilience is not toughness. It is tenderness with endurance. It is the soft, sacred act of holding on to hope even after the world has tried to snatch it from you. It is choosing progress over pity, choosing courage over convenience. This is what most people miss. They think setbacks mean stop. But setbacks are simply echoes of the old world fighting against your arrival. When you start rising, everything below you will try to pull you back, not out of hatred, but out of habit. The old self, the old story, the old excuses, they beg you to return, but you must not, because once you've tasted vision, you cannot go back to blindness. Once you've seen who you could become, mediocrity is a betrayal. You must rise again and again, even with shaking hands, even with tears, even when the world does not believe in you, because your direction is not a debate, it is a declaration. You are not lost, you are becoming, and becoming takes everything. Becoming takes everything, and it gives you everything in return. But the next trap on the road, the one Confucius warned about most, is the trap of false learning. He said, "To know what you know and what you do not know, that is true knowledge." And yet, the world today is drunk on information, starving for wisdom. Most people aren't learning. They're collecting quotes, collecting videos, collecting books they'll never finish and ideas they'll never apply. They confuse stimulation for transformation. But real learning requires humility. It asks you to become small, to become open, to become teachable. It asks you to say, "I don't know, but I will learn." Because direction isn't just knowing where you want to go. It's knowing what you still need to become in order to get there. That's the difference between the arrogant and the awakened. The arrogant man believes he already has enough. The awakened man seeks more. Not more things, but more understanding. Confucius lived by questions, not because he lacked answers, but because he knew that the right question opens more doors than 1,000 empty affirmations. So ask yourself, what am I pretending to know that I do not? What lesson have I been avoiding? What weakness have I tried to bury beneath pride? Because true learning breaks you first. It humbles you. It puts a mirror to your ignorance and says, "Look." It strips away the illusion of already knowing and leaves you naked with responsibility. And responsibility, that's the next phase. Personal responsibility is the oxygen of clarity. Without it, your direction chokes and dies. Confucius did not teach blame. He did not teach entitlement. He taught agency. the power to shape your world by shaping your character, he said. One, we see men of a contrary character. We should turn inwards and examine ourselves, not complain, not condemn. Examine, reflect, take ownership. Because the lost man says, "Why is life like this?" The found man says, "What can I do about it?" Responsibility does not mean you caused every problem. It means you choose to be the solution. And this is where you begin to move with true power. Not the loud kind, but the rooted kind. The kind that doesn't panic. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that acts from internal direction, not external pressure. That power comes from alignment, from waking up and knowing that your values, your words, your actions all point in the same direction. You stop living two lives. You stop switching masks depending on who's watching. You become one, whole, honest, unshakable. And when that happens, the world begins to respond, not because it suddenly favors you, but because it finally recognizes you. You become congruent. You say less, but it means more. You move slower, but it reaches farther. You work quieter, but it echoes louder, because direction breeds confidence. Not the arrogant kind, but the kind that says, "I am walking the right path, even if no one claps, even if no one comes with me, even if it's hard-bought, and it will be hard." Which brings us to the final element most ignore: adaptability. Confucius understood that the river never fights the rocks. It flows around them, he said. The green reed which bends in the wind is stronger than the mighty oak which breaks in a storm. You cannot cling to your plans more tightly than your purpose, because life will not follow your blueprint. It will test your blueprint. And if you are too rigid, you will break. But if you are rooted in direction, you will bend and rise again. This is the art of staying found, not perfection, not unbroken focus, but adaptability grounded in purpose. Change is not your enemy. Disconnection is. Losing touch with why you started. Forgetting what you're here to do. Allowing detours to become destinations. But if you remain awake, if you keep your eyes on the direction, not the distraction, then no storm can steal you. No failure can define you. No delay can defeat you. Because you are no longer a wanderer. You are a warrior of clarity. You do not chase meaning. You create it. You do not fear the unknown. You shape it. You do not wait to be chosen. You choose yourself, daily, fully, relentlessly. This is what Confucius knew, that the truly found man does not need applause, titles, or fame. He walks with a peace that cannot be purchased and a focus that cannot be shaken. He is direction made flesh. You want to know why most people stay lost? Because they are afraid to be alone with the truth. They surround themselves with noise, opinions, trends, distractions, expectations. But silence, real silence, terrifies them. Because in silence you meet yourself, and most don't want that meeting. They fear what they'll find. The emptiness, the compromises, the dreams they buried alive just to be accepted. But Confucius taught silence is a true friend who never betrays. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't lie to you. It reflects back exactly what you are. And in that reflection is your redemption. If you're brave enough to see it, you want clarity. Turn down the volume. You want purpose. Stop outsourcing your identity, because you will never find your path while you're living someone else's, your parents' expectations, your culture's checklist, your friend's timeline, your algorithm's definition of success. You must choose it. Visibility or authenticity. You cannot serve both. One will give you likes, the other will give you life. That's what Confucius meant when he spoke of the superior man. Not superior in wealth, not superior in power, superior in alignment. He said, the superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions. Not loud, not performative, just focused. He doesn't advertise his discipline. He lives it. He doesn't broadcast his suffering. He endures it. He doesn't chase being understood. He becomes undeniable. But there's something else he does, something most forget. He cultivates joy. Not the fake smile kind, not the think positive kind, but real joy, the kind born from a life of meaning. Confucius taught that a man aligned with virtue, living in harmony with himself and others, experiences joy that no external crisis can take away. This is not delusion. This is inner wealth. Because when you have direction, when your purpose is clear, even the mundane becomes sacred. The work becomes worship. The challenges become teachers. The journey becomes a gift. And this is the paradox. The more you let go of needing to be great, the more greatness finds you. Because greatness is not something you chase. It's something you attract by who you become. The man who wakes with purpose does not need a spotlight. The man who walks with clarity does not fear the fog. The man who serves something higher than his ego does not fall when others mock or misunderstand him. He is moved by principle, not pressure, by character, not convenience, by legacy, not likes. So if you feel lost right now, if the world feels loud and your soul feels quiet, if your days are full but your heart feels empty, that's not failure. That's the call to return to yourself, the call to remember what you once knew before the noise, the call to become the kind of person who no longer needs to find the way, because they are the way. Confucius didn't give a map. He gave a mirror. He taught us how to see, clearly, deeply, relentlessly. And if you have the courage to look, not just once, not just when it's easy, but daily, you will never be lost again, because a man who sees clearly can walk through any storm. A man who walks with truth cannot be shaken. A man who leads himself does not wait for permission to rise. So rise, not because you're ready, not because it's easy, but because it's time. The world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more perfection. It doesn't need more empty ambition. It needs you, fully awake, fully responsible, fully aligned with a direction that sets your soul on fire. Become that, and watch the world follow. A man of purpose does not chase. He attracts confidence, patience, and intentionality as success tools. Success is slow at first, then sudden, inspired by Confucius' view on patience and compounding effort. Success does not come loudly. It does not enter the room with applause. It does not announce itself at the door. It arrives quietly after years of silence, after you've bled in the dark, worked without praise, and walked alone long enough to forget what comfort feels like. Confucius once said, "It does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop." And yet, in today's world, obsessed with speed, obsessed with results, obsessed with now, this truth is buried under noise. We want the mountain moved before we've picked up a single stone. We want the masterpiece before we've touched the brush. But success, real success, the kind that transforms your name into legacy, is not built on speed. It is built on consistency, on slowness, on unseen repetitions, on the days you show up when nobody watches, on the effort you give when it feels pointless, on the sweat you pour into the soil before the first green sprout even appears. Because the beginning always feels like a lie. You show up early, work late, and nothing moves. You give your all and still fall short. You speak your vision and they laugh. But understand this, the laws that govern compound growth are the same laws that govern your success. A bamboo seed is buried for 5 years before it breaks the ground. 5 years of watering, 5 years of doubt, 5 years of invisible progress. And then, in a matter of weeks, it shoots up 90 feet into the sky, not because it grew overnight, but because it spent years building roots deeper than anyone could see. And you are no different. The first stage of success is root building, internal, silent, and invisible. It is you fighting battles no one claps for. It is you learning, unlearning, sharpening the blade in darkness. It is you being ignored, mocked, forgotten, and yet still rising. Because here's the truth that every master knows. Success is slow at first, then sudden. It creeps, it crawls, it tests your patience, your belief, your identity. It makes you question why you started, why you suffer, and whether it's worth it. And right when you're about to break, the shift begins. The weight you carry starts to feel lighter, not because life changes, but because you have. Because persistence builds power. And power is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to continue through it. You want success. Then get comfortable with being ignored. Get comfortable with being underestimated, overlooked, doubted, even by those closest to you. Because most people stop when they don't see results. They believe silence means failure. They believe slow means wrong. But the wise understand. Silence is where the foundation is laid. Every hour spent in obscurity is a brick in the empire you're building. You cannot see it now, but one day they will say, it happens suddenly, overnight, out of nowhere. But you will know the truth. You were compounding effort while they were complaining. You were reading while they were scrolling. You were failing forward while they were frozen by fear. The world does not reward the loudest. It rewards the most consistent. And consistency is born from clarity. Clarity of purpose. Clarity of direction. Clarity that what you do today, no matter how small, goes into tomorrow. So stop looking for instant returns. Stop asking where the harvest is before the seeds have even rooted. Instead, ask yourself, what am I building? Who am I becoming in the process? Am I willing to become the person success requires? Because success is not about what you get. It's about who you become. And who you become is shaped most in the slowness. That's where the character is forged. That's where the discipline is carved. That's where you learn the priceless art of moving forward without applause. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before inventing the light bulb. But when asked about his failures, he said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That's not just optimism. That is an understanding of process. That is the mindset of someone who trusts the invisible. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination, but Henry Ford went bankrupt 5 times. Abraham Lincoln lost more elections than he won before becoming president. They weren't lucky. They were unbreakable. And that is your job, to become unbreakable in your pursuit, to build a resolve so deep that no delay, No insult, no failure can shake it. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need overnight success. You need to plant, to water, to trust, and to continue, especially when nothing is working, especially when your dreams feel like burdens, because that's how it always feels right before it happens. Right before the sudden success, there are years of being unknown. There are nights where you doubt your gift. There are mornings where quitting would feel like a relief. But if you hold the line, if you do the work, if you stay the coursey, there will come a moment when everything shifts, when the calls you used to beg for now beg for you, when the doors that were closed suddenly fly open, when your name is spoken in rooms you've never stepped into. That moment won't be magic. It won't be luck. It will be earned. Earned in silence. Earned in patience. Earned in faith. Because success is not linear. It is exponential. It multiplies without warning, but only for those who waited without quitting. So build your roots now. Build your habits. Build your mindset. The world cannot give to someone who hasn't built the capacity to hold it. Confucius didn't teach shortcuts. He taught alignment. He taught virtue. He taught enduring wisdom. So endure, not passively, but purposefully. Wake up and move, even if it's 1 inch forward. Speak your vision, even if your voice shakes. Sharpen your tools, even if no one is watching. Because in the end, they will say, it happened suddenly. What they call luck is often the compounded interest of 1,000 boring, disciplined days. They don't see the early mornings. They don't feel the silent sacrifices. They just see the moment it tips and call it magic. But you will know better, because you didn't just build a result. You built yourself. You built mental armor where there used to be excuses. You built a spine of iron where there used to be fear. And more than anything, you built a standard that could no longer tolerate mediocrity. You stopped waiting for the world to believe in you and started acting like it didn't matter whether they did. There's a moment in every journey when the external world goes silent, and all you have left is your inner voice. That moment is sacred. That's when men become kings. That's when workers become warriors. That's when another level of you awakens. Not the one who needs comfort, but the one who demands greatness. And greatness demands many things. It demands belief that borders on delusion. It demands discipline that ignores convenience. And it demands patience, a kind of long suffering that stretches the soul and rewires the nervous system. Confucius said, "The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stone dogs." Read that again. He didn't say, "Wait until you have a bulldozer." He didn't say, "Wait until it's easy." He said, "Begin. Begin with what you have. Begin where you are. Begin now, because most people spend their lives waiting to be ready. But readiness is a lie. No one is ready to carry the weight of success until they've built the strength through struggle. Every step you take now, every stone you lift, is a rep for your destiny. And just like in the gym, the gains don't come from the first few reps. They come when it starts to burn. They come when you want to drop the weight and choose not to. They come when you continue, not because it's easy, but because you said you would. That is the power of commitment. Commitment is not motivation. Motivation is emotion. Commitment is identity. It is what you do regardless of how you feel. When it's raining, when it's lonely, when you're tired, when it seems like nothing is working. Commitment is the silent promise you make to your future self and the proof you leave in your present actions. You do not need motivation to change your life. You need resolve. You need clarity so deep that it cuts through noise. You need vision that stands taller than doubt. You need the kind of fire that doesn't scream, it burns slow and steady, and never goes out. That's what carried Carnegie from a poor boy in a one-room home to the richest man in America. That's what pushed Lincoln through loss after loss, heartbreak after heartbreak, until he rose to lead a divided nation. That's what pulled Oprah from abuse, rejection, and ridicule to become one of the most powerful voices on earth. Not speed, not perfection, relentless forward motion, because nothing compounds faster than belief when paired with action. But most people wait for clarity to act. They wait for evidence to believe. They wait for validation before they begin. And in doing so, they wait their life away. But the few, the rare, the unreasonable, they flip the formula. They believe before the results. They act before the applause. They sacrifice before the reward. And in doing so, they bend reality. They understand what Confucius taught over 500 years ago. He who learns but does not think is lost. He who thinks but does not learn is in great danger. In other words, reflection is useless without execution, and execution is dangerous without reflection. So reflect, then move. Think, then act. Plan, then build. Not tomorrow, now, because the clock is not waiting. Not for you, not for anyone. You are not too early. You are not too late. You are right on time. If you begin today, and if you've already begun, then double down. Don't retreat because results are slow. Remember, they always are. The beginning is not supposed to feel good. It's supposed to test you. You are being asked to prove your future through present behavior. You are being asked to develop the patience of the wise and the persistence of the legendary. And when you combine those two forces, patience and persistence, you create something unstoppable. A man or woman on fire whose delay is only temporary, whose setbacks are only setups, whose silence is only the prelude to something loud and legendary. Do not fear being unknown. Fear being unchanged. Do not fear slow growth. Fear comfort that sedates your spirit. Do not fear the long road, because the long road is the only road. Every shortcut will cost you more than you gain. Every quick win fades just as fast as it arrives. But what you earn stays. What you build lasts. And what you become, no one can take from you. This is not about hustle. This is about honor. The honor of knowing that you gave everything to the vision you were born to carry. That you never betrayed your dream, even when the world gave you every reason to. This is your time, not to explode overnight, but to commit for life. To fall in love with the boring, the broken, the unfinished. To see the work not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that you are worthy of what's coming. And what's coming will not be slow. It will be sudden, like lightning from a clear sky, like applause after years of silence, like success after 1,000 quiet days of compounding effort. They won't see it coming, but you will, because you earned it. The roots always grow before the tree reaches the sky, in silence, in darkness, in stillness. You can't see it, but something powerful is forming underground, and that's what your life is right now. A root system. Every discipline you keep, Every vice you eliminate, every time you say no to what feels good and yes to what builds good, you're deepening your roots. And when your roots are deep, no storm can touch you. You see, people chase visibility. They want the followers, the fame, the platform. But platforms collapse if the foundation is weak. That's why success isn't about being seen early. It's about being ready when you are. If the opportunity showed up today, would you have the character to carry it? Would you have the habits to hold it? Would you have the maturity to multiply it? Because success doesn't just test your skills, it tests your soul. And if you skip the struggle, you'll fold under the spotlight. But if you've been forged in fire, if you've been shaped by delay, disappointment, and discipline, you won't just survive the moment, you'll dominate it. Because the same pressure that breaks the average man sharpens the master. That's the difference between potential and power. Potential is what you could do. Power is what you've proven. And you prove it in the dark, when no one is watching. That's where you build the habits that shape your fate. That's where you build the integrity that outlasts temptation. That's where you build the resilience that can't be taught in books or bought with money, only through living it. Confucius said, "When it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps." He didn't say lower the bar. He didn't say shrink the vision. He said adjust the plan, not the purpose. And yet, most people do the opposite. The second it gets hard, they rewrite the dream. Not you. You rewire the habits. You realign the routine. You restructure the process. But the dream, the purpose, the mission, untouchable. Because deep down, you know the goal isn't just achievement. It's alignment. Living in such harmony with your values, your vision, and your voice, that the world has no choice but to recognize it. Not because you shouted louder, but because your results became too loud to ignore. You outgrew average. You outlasted excuses. You outlived the doubt. And now, you're becoming someone the old version of you could never recognize. Not because you got lucky, but because you got clear. You stopped treating your mind like a playground and started treating it like a command center. You trained your thoughts like a general trains soldiers. No more random negativity. No more casual distractions. No more wasting days on things that don't feed the mission. Because energy is currency, and you finally learned to invest it like it matters. You stopped saying, "I'll try." You started saying, "I will." You stopped waiting for perfect. You started executing with what you had. You stopped needing external motivation because internal commitment had already been made. That's what changes the game. Not talent, not charm, but alignment and execution. Edison didn't invent the light bulb in one spark of genius. He failed thousands of times, and each failure, a stone laid on the road to triumph. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Ford went broke 5 times before revolutionizing industry. You don't get to your version of success by skipping the mess. You go through it, eyes open, heart on fire, because now you understand this is not supposed to be easy. If it were, everyone would have their dream, but only the few, the willing, the focused, the faithful. They walk the path all the way to the end. The rest, they trade their destiny for comfort, their future for convenience, their fire for fantasy. You are not them. You are not average. You are not casual. You are not a leaf blown by circumstance. You are the storm. You are the one writing this story. And it's a slow build, yes. But when the pages catch flame, it will be sudden. It will look to the world like you exploded overnight. They'll ask, where did this come from? But you'll know, it came from the early mornings when you didn't hit snooze. From the late nights when you stayed in and studied. From the endless days when doubt tried to suffocate you. But you kept breathing faith. It came from the little things you did when it felt like nothing was happening. Because that's where it always comes from. The breakthrough isn't an event, it's a result. A result of seeds planted over and over again with no guarantee, no applause, no crowd, just commitment. Success does not respond to the loudest voice. It responds to the longest obedience. And if you keep showing up, success won't just visit you. It will bow to you. Because you didn't chase it like a child. You built yourself into someone it couldn't ignore. That's the reward of discipline. That's the power of patience. That's the legacy of those who understands success is slow at first, then sudden. There will be days where the world seems to spin without you, where everything feels like it's moving, except your life, where progress seems invisible and the silence screams, what's the point? But in that silence, something deeper is calling you, not to quit, not to panic, but to listen. Because silence isn't absence, it's instruction. It teaches you to be still. It forces you to trust what you've planted, even when nothing's blooming. That's the season you're in now, and it's the most powerful one of all. The season of unseen growth, of invisible victories, of internal expansion. And if you endure it, something irreversible happens. You become unstoppable, because most people quit when things get quiet, when validation doesn't come fast enough, when no one's clapping and the results take too long. But you're not here for claps. You're here for change, and change doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up like a whisper, like a shift in the way you see the world. A deeper patience, a stronger focus, a refusal to be moved by anything except purpose. Confucius said, "It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop." That's it. Not how fast, not how perfect, just don't stop. Keep writing the words, keep swinging the axe, keep sharpening the blade, even if no one is watching. Because the man who keeps going, he's building something time cannot destroy. See, this world is obsessed with momentum. Everyone wants to go fast, to hack success, to plan X, everything overnight. But they forget the same fire that burns fast burns out fast. The ones who win, they're not the fastest. They're the ones who never stop walking. One clear step, every day, even in the dark, even when tired, even when the dream feels distant, because every step becomes a story. Every story becomes a legacy, and every legacy begins with a decision: I will not stop. Think about bamboo. For years, it grows underground. No shoots, no visible growth, just roots, expanding, anchoring, reaching deep. Then suddenly, in just a few weeks, it surges upward, sometimes over 3 feet a day. People call it a miracle, but it's not a miracle. It's compounding effort finally breaking the surface. That's you. Every hour you've studied, every failure you've owned, every sacrifice you've made when no one was looking. They weren't lost. They were compounding. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. And every setback, a deposit in the bank of your future self. When the day comes, and it will come, that your breakthrough breaks through the ground, the world will act like you were lucky. They won't see the years it took to master the craft, to heal the wounds, to stay the course. They won't know the nights you cried and still showed up the next morning. They'll only see the height of your bamboo, not the depth of your roots. But you'll know, you'll remember, and you'll walk differently because of it. That's the difference between those who achieve and those who collapse at the first sign of struggle. One built their house on hope. The other built it on habits, and habits are where your power lies, not the dramatic moments, not the viral speeches, but the small, quiet decisions you make every day, to read instead of scroll, to move instead of complain, to reflect instead of react, to show up even when it's raining inside your soul. That's the real grind. And it's not always glamorous. It won't always be praised, but it's the only thing that builds a life that lasts. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't look for motivation, look for clarity. What am I building? Who am I becoming? And how will I honor that vision today in the small things? Because when you do that, every action becomes sacred, and over time, the sacred becomes seen. That's the power of alignment. That's the miracle of compounding purpose. You don't just rise in the world. You rise in yourself. You go from needing motivation to being moved by mission. You go from chasing success to embodying it. Because success was never outside of you. It was always waiting to rise from you. And then, one day, the shift happens. You don't hear a drum roll. There is no crowd, no announcement. But inside you, something cracks open. The doubt breaks. The delay dissolves. And in its place, a quiet knowing takes root. You are not becoming the person you've been chasing. You already are. Because the goal was never the car, the house, the applause. The goal was to become someone who doesn't need them to feel whole. This is when you begin to move differently. You no longer chase every opportunity. You evaluate them. You no longer compare yourself to others. You compete only with who you were yesterday. You no longer react to chaos. You respond with clarity. And this is when life becomes magnetic. Because the man who no longer needs validation becomes impossible to ignore. You walk into rooms and people feel it before you speak. That depth, that centeredness, that earned confidence. It can't be faked. It can't be bought. It's the product of patience, of showing up when it didn't make sense, of keeping your word to yourself even when it hurt. This is the law of compounding effort. And no, you won't find it in quick fix books or viral clips. But every titan knew it. Lincoln, who lost more elections than he won, until the one that changed history. Edison, who failed 10,000 times so you could see in the dark. Disney, who was fired for lacking imagination. Ford, who was told the V8 engine was mechanically impossible, and they all said the same thing in different words. Success is slow at first, then sudden. That's the truth no one markets, but everyone who's ever made it knows. It's slow when it's real, because real transformation isn't surface level. It's a total rebuild. From the ground up, your beliefs, your focus, your self-respect. Everything must evolve. You must outgrow laziness. You must outgrow drama. You must outgrow the version of you that blamed others instead of building yourself. That's the price of sudden success, a season of deliberate obscurity, where you're doing the work that no one applauds, fighting battles no one sees, writing chapters no one reads, until the book is done. And that book, that life, that legacy you're writing, it will not be remembered because you were popular. It will be remembered because you were principled. Because when everyone else quit, you kept your promise. Because when everything felt slow, you trusted that growth wasn't asleep, it was simply quiet. You became the person who can be trusted with abundance. Because you proved you could carry struggle without breaking your integrity. This is when everything changes. Not because the world gave you permission, but because you gave yourself command. And people will ask, how did you do it? How did you stay consistent for so long without burning out? And you'll smile, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. You'll know the truth. You weren't chasing speed. You were building stability. You weren't seduced by overnight wins. You were seduced by permanent growth. And when it all finally arrives, the opportunity, the recognition, the reward, you'll meet it with calm, because you're no longer surprised by the results of your discipline. You expected it. You earned it, because while they were chasing shortcuts, you were mastering the long game. And in this life, the long game always wins. The long game always wins because it is the only game that leaves no part of you behind. It doesn't just build results, it builds a reputation. It doesn't just shape outcomes, it shapes your identity. It doesn't just change what you have, it changes who you are when no one's watching. Because here's the truth. You don't rise by doing what's easy. You rise by becoming the kind of person who does what is necessary. When you show up in silence, the world will test you. When you persist without praise, the world will ignore you. But when you finish what you started, the world can't help but watch. And when that moment comes, when the results hit all at once, like a wave that finally crashes after building for miles beneath the surface, it will feel sudden to them, but not to you, because you'll remember the early mornings when no one clapped, the late nights when you whispered, "Keep going," to yourself, the sacrifices that made no sense to others, but made you. That's the unseen compounding of courage. That's the soul tax of greatness. Every inch you gain alone becomes a mile of strength in the storm. Every no you turn into a not yet, every failure you repurpose as fuel, every delay you greet with discipline, builds a man the world cannot shake. Because you didn't just grind, you grew. You didn't just hustle, you hardened. You didn't just dream, you demanded more of yourself until your dream became real. That's the Confucian code of success. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones, stone after stone, habit after habit, morning after morning, until one day they look at you and say, "How did you move the mountain?" And you'll say, "I didn't. I just never stopped lifting." That's what they miss. That success doesn't explode into being. It accumulates in whispers, in work, in self-control. It begins in the invisible and ends in the undeniable. Look around at the people who have made a dent in the world, the true greats, and you will see this pattern. They walked through the fire of obscurity. They endured years of being underestimated, They lived through 1,000 silent battles where quitting whispered seductively and they answered with resolve. Why? Because they weren't doing it for the world. They were doing it with the world in mind, but without the world's permission. They were honoring something internal, a code, a standard, a vow to never abandon themselves again. Because once you know what it feels like to keep your word to yourself, you will never go back to being a liar in your own eyes. And when you live like that, success becomes a side effect of your character, not your luck, not your privilege, not your connections. Your character. That's what Confucius meant when he said, "The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions." And when your actions start echoing louder than your ambitions, that's when the world starts to listen. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. Not because you're viral, but because you're vital. You've become necessary to the space you occupy. Not a filler, not a copy, but a force. All because you endured the slow. It happened suddenly. They'll whisper when your name echoes in rooms you've never entered. But you who blood in the dark, who sharpened blades no one could see, who watered empty soil year after year, you'll know the truth. There was no sudden, only the inevitable arrival of what you planted when no one was watching. So let them call it luck. Let them call it magic. You'll cradle the secret in your palms, the weight of every stone you carried, every morning you rose alone, every no that became not yet. And when the world leans in, hungry for your formula, smile and tell them, begin, then turn back to your work. The next mountain won't move itself.